You're listening to the Critical Hour on Radio Sputnik. I'm Wilmer Leon, joined here by my co-host, Garland Nixon.
Thank you, Wilmer.
Sputnik reports Türkiye would like to join BRICS. Türkiye would like to become a member and will monitor the developments in the organization, according to the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. He said this earlier today. Well, what are the factors around this, and what do we need to consider? For insight, let's turn to our next guest. He holds the John J. and Rebecca Moore's Chair of History and African American Studies at the University of Houston. He's one of the most prolific writers of our time. His latest books are entitled, I Dare Say, a Gerald Horne Reader, and Acknowledging Radical Histories. And the latest book, which is due out, I think, within days, is entitled
Armed Struggle with a Question Mark. Panthers and communists, black nationalists and liberals in Southern California through the 60s and 70s.
And when will it be in the stores?
I would say by Monday.
Dr. Gerald Horne, as always, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
So the BRICS bloc outperformed the G7, the conglomerate of wealthy industrialized nations, in GDP in 2022. And according to the forecast, the BRICS economies will account for more than 50% of global GDP by 2030. When Dr. Horne, when you hear that Turkian President Erdogan is talking about becoming a member of BRICS, what immediately comes to your mind?
Well, what immediately comes to my mind is that he's not alone. If not for the overweening, overbearing presence of the United States of America, I dare say that Mexico, under its new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, would also try to join the BRICS. Likewise, I would not be surprised if Indonesia, the largest predominantly Muslim nation on planet Earth, would like to join the BRICS, along with Algeria as well. They would be in good company, not only Russia, India, China, and South Africa, but with the newly minted members, including Iran, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Ethiopia. This is not surprising that Türkiye is considering joining this august company, not least because it has complex ties, to put it euphemistically, to Washington. On the one hand, Türkiye is the eastern flank of NATO, the U.S.-dominated North Atlantic Treaty Organization. On the other hand, it's no secret that Türkiye has difficulties with the U.S. allies in the European Union. The European Union has shunned Turkish membership for years now, which has not gone down well in Ankara, not to mention the fact that the chief political opponent of Mr. Erdogan, speaking of Fethullah Gulen, has been in exile for years in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and Washington has turned thumbs down on extraditing him back to Türkiye to stand trial. Not to mention the fact that Mr. Erdogan oftentimes seeks to gain leverage in the United States of America when he visits this country, when he always takes time to meet and confer with Black American Muslim leaders and rank and file. At the same time, to give you an idea of the wiliness of Mr. Erdogan, he is a major supplier, that is to say, his son-in-law is a major supplier of drones to Kiev, but at the same time, recall that shortly after the special military operation was launched in February 2022, but of course, in March, you had these peace talks by Mr. Erdogan hosting in Istanbul that could have been successful, but for interference from London and Washington. Now we see that with the October 7, 2023 intervention of Hamas from Gaza into Israel, you see that in solidarity, Türkiye has not only hosted Hamas leaders at the highest levels, but also has broken off export and import ties with Israel. It has joined the International Court of Justice case brought by South Africa against Israel, which is no minor matter in Washington, because the leaders of the State Department and the Pentagon and the White House could fairly be considered aiders and abettors of this plausible case of genocide made out by South Africa in The Hague. And then again, returning to the European Union, we see that Turkey has leverage in the locomotive of the European Union, speaking of the Federal Republic of Germany, since we know that for decades now, Germany has absorbed millions, hundreds of thousands of workers from Turkey, which helped to propel that particular economy. At the same time, Turkey has very complicated and complex relations with France. They have crossed swords a number of times, most recently with regard to the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, where Azerbaijan emerged triumphant, not least because of assistance from Turkey. And of course, Armenia was on the losing side despite ample assistance from France. Now, you should not expect Washington to accept idly this kind of conflict with Turkey. I have noticed that of late that there has been the arising of a new so-called Islamist party in Turkey, the so-called Welfare Party, which is trying to steal the religious thunder of Mr. Erdogan's AKP. Do not be surprised if you discover that Washington has a hand or has had a hand in the ascendancy and the rise of this new party challenging Mr. Erdogan from the right. So to sum up, we should not be shocked nor surprised by this idea that Turkey might want to join the BRICS. It's totally logical and consistent with its foreign policy. And the only question is, why has it taken so long for this to become a news item?
Oh, one question. Let's say Turkey joins the BRICS. All the business about sanctions against any of the countries in BRICS, Iran, Russia, China, I think they have like a non-aggression treaty. So how do you stay in NATO when NATO, the fact that they joined BRICS, doesn't that kind of put the kibosh on their kind of NATO and fully partnership and alignment with the U.S. imperialism?
Well, to use the phrase of choice in Washington nowadays, I think NATO is sailing into uncharted waters. Recall that last year, when you had the BRICS meeting in South Africa, you had the spectacle of President Macron, Manny Macron himself, seeking an invitation to the BRICS summit in South Africa. Now, he was turned down summarily and understandably, but that gives you an idea of the reality that many European nations are beginning to hedge, not only with regard to NATO, but perhaps even with regard to the Group of Seven as well. And so when we see Turkey basically playing footsies with BRICS countries, we should also keep in mind that you should not be shocked nor surprised if Turkey seeks a kind of affiliation with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO, which, as its title suggests, is closely tied to China and secondarily, I would say, Russia, but is seen as a counterpoint and a challenger to NATO. That is an indication of how the mighty are falling, and I think that Turkey is seeking to gain leverage and advantage and join what it perceives to be the winning side.
And switching hemispheres, and we just have a couple of minutes, new Haitian Prime Minister sworn in. Gerald Horne was sworn in as Haiti's Prime Minister on yesterday, promising to deliver for the impoverished Caribbean nation grappling with overlapping security, humanitarian, and political crises. He was appointed by the Transitional Presidential Council running the country following the resignation of Ariel Henry. Your thoughts, Dr. Horne?
Well, he is accepting a very problematic and difficult portfolio. You know that the backdrop of what's going on in the Caribbean is this recent state visit of Kenyan President William Ruto, who has agreed to send hundreds, if not a few thousand, Kenyan police forces to confront paramilitary forces in Haiti. This has not gone down very well in Nairobi, despite the fact that apparently agreeing to join the Kenyan forces are forces from Chad and Bangladesh and Jamaica and Barbados. But even outside of the paramilitary forces, you have forces in Haiti who are not necessarily pleased by the arrival of these foreign forces because previous dispatching of men with arms has led not only to physical abuse, but sexual abuse more particularly, not to the spreading of disease. Not to mention the fact that the solidarity movement in the United States of America is unhappy with this Kenyan decision, this decision by Washington to put a black face on U.S. military imperial intervention. And so this new prime minister is going to have a difficult road to hoe as he accepts office.
Dr. Gerald Horne, as always, thank you so much for your time. We greatly, greatly appreciate that analysis, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you.